Do you hear anyone talking about this study? This is huge. Autoimmune disease can do a huge number on your life.
I'm Ann Marie McQueen, journalist and proud 50-ish woman, and we are here looking for the true truth in perimenopause, menopause, midlife, and beyond.
Opening our minds to other possibilities is not always easy.
Hotflash Inc.
You're all woman to me. All right, Ann Marie.
Hello, welcome back to the Hotflash Inc. podcast. I became completely immersed in putting together the Hotflash Inc. Summit. And like many things I do, I didn't count the whole cost. I am going to count the whole cost moving forward. This is ridiculous. I'm 55, but I don't know. Would you ever do anything if you did count the whole cost? Obviously, I read count the whole cost somewhere, and I'm saying it a lot, but I think it's a very valuable measure. I don't think I would have done the Hot Flashing Summit if I had counted the whole cost. We need to do new things and not freak ourselves out about the amount of work involved in them and how long it will take. So, yeah, I'm going to try to count the whole cost, but I'm also going to push myself to do new things. The summit was really interesting. So this is a digital summit. I interviewed 36 people. Originally, it was going to be 20, but I'm a little bit crazy and I didn't stop, and I would find new people and I would squeeze them in. And then I got an idea to do some exercise breaks, and I enlisted some friends to do those. In the end, it was 40 sessions, not 20, and that's double the amount of work. And I'd like to remind everyone that I do work full time. I'm not complaining. I'm talking about myself as a mental case. Uh, yeah, I still work full time. I'm a content consultant for a museum that's opening here in Abu Dhabi. So I took a vacation in July and it was so incredibly restorative. I went with my family to a cottage on Lake Huron and we watched long, long, long sunsets, and I spent time with my glorious niece and nephew. Some friends came up and it was just so great. And I was on a high from that. And then I got into the summit and basically I was working constantly. I was just on a call with the Midst, which is a really great organization by Amy Cuevas Schroeder. I hope I'm saying her name right. And I was on there with EJ and Marina from NABI, which is a really cool company based out of New York, and they have a perimenopause supplement. It's really neat. And then I was also on with uh, Courtney and Esther from the Carry, which is a new weighted vest company just for women. They have, like coordinated all the boob situation, and they've got all these orders. They don't even have their product out yet. And everyone started talking about the double day. And I thought, gosh, is this where we've gotten to? Like the double day? Yeah, I know the double day. The double day. And I don't even know what you call it when you work all weekend. And I'm not complaining, certainly, but I am speaking about how doing this summit pushed me to a place to recognize something. I mean, basically recognize that I feel like I have to work so hard all the time. And I've known this about myself for a while, but it's like, oh, that's just who I am, and that's just what I'm like. And I've had another couple of things going on in the last 6 months in my life. And one of them is that I had COVID in February, and this work situation I'm in is quite stressful. And I never really recovered from the COVID. I just became exhausted, and then in short order was feeling dreadful, but sort of just going forward. I didn't understand how I was feeling from COVID. And at the time of COVID, my doctor, who's a GP homeopath, she's very forward thinking. And she said, you need to take a detox for that COVID because it's really doing a number on people. She's not a huge fan of the intervention that was used for COVID. And she said, I know a lot of people blame that, but the actual COVID itself also possesses the spike protein and it's doing a number on people. And I thought, okay, so I ordered this supplement, this detox protocol. It never came. I ordered it again. It never came. And then I just descended into what happens when you're not feeling well. I just, I just was feeling awful and trying to work and just soldiering on. But what was happening was that I was getting these intense pressure headaches for like, a week at a time. And like my neck was like concrete and my head just felt like it was being pressurized. And I was extremely tired and I had a bunch of other stuff going on, and I just felt absolutely awful. And this went on for quite a few months. In June, I went to a neurologist, and that's where I found out my blood pressure was sky high. I have never had a blood pressure problem. I had a full cardio workup 18 months before that, zero issue. Had my blood pressure taken in February before COVID, no issue. And I had noticed one time I had my blood pressure taken, it was a little bit high, but I just didn't think anything of it. I mean, mine doesn't even go up in the doctor's office, or didn't, due to the white coat syndrome. Like I just have never had a problem. And it was so high. And he said, you have stage 2 hypertension. Well, you're the age, and he said, do you exercise? I'm like, don't even get me started. Like, do I exercise? I exercise, I eat right. I have for decades. I write about this stuff. This makes no sense. And he didn't seem to have any sort of solution. He just wanted to give me an MRI. He said, if I give you an MRI, I bet your headache will go away. So I ended up contacting my doctor, and she said, well, it sounds like that you have COVID related hypertension. I looked and there's studies on it. And, you know, whatever's going on in my body, you can research. It has to do with fibrin and small blood clots and my blood pressure raising to compensate and the headache pressure. And I don't know. So I've been dealing with that while putting on this summit. And then I hit a wall, like sort of right before the summit, where I just collapsed. I just like couldn't get off my bed. And so I worked from home for 2 weeks, and I was able to finish the summit. I was able to feel better. And now I have come to this realization that something has to give. So I'm going to let go of my job in December, and I'm going to do Hotflash full time, maybe a few other things. I'm pretty excited about that. I took a course by this fellow, James Wedmore. He's a big famous, CEO, business advisor, but it was a wealth course. It was like a 30-day challenge to change your money mindset, which is something I've been working on intensely since I went through menopause. And we went through all these memories, and we were challenging memories. And one of the memories that came up just on the weekend that I felt really emotional about was that after high school, I wanted to take a break. I wanted to take a year off. And I said it to my dad. And, as a Gen X person, this wasn't like you didn't call the shots. You didn't really have agency as a person, even an 18-year-old person, which I was at the time. What happened was I said to my dad, I want to take a year off. And he said, absolutely not. There's no way, you're going straight to university. And I remember him saying, you can take a sabbatical once you start working. I have this habit of making a joke out of the things in my life that happen that are hard. I wrote about this in Mona Eltahawy's essay anthology, Bloody Hell. I wrote this when I was mugged in Paris. I wrote about how that was terrifying. Obviously, I was in Paris by myself, and I was mugged by a group of 8 or 9 guys. And I immediately turned it into some sort of comedy routine because, I thought they were human trafficking me, and they were just trying to get my wallet. And I had been taking boxing lessons, which is why they didn't get my wallet. And I made a joke about how there was no music playing. It's amazing I could kick them off. And I did this with my dad. Like, I've told this story so often that I wanted to take a year off. And then my dad said, no, you can take a sabbatical once you start working. And we all know no one does that. And I felt really emotional because I don't remember why I wanted to take a year off after high school, but obviously there was a reason. All my friends were going to university. You did not go to university. I had no intention of not going to university. A lot of different thoughts about university today, but imagine just being 18 and just, no, you're going. You're going to do all this work that you're just you've just told me you don't feel prepared to do for whatever reason. Not the question that I and many of my Gen X cohorts were not asked. Why? Why do you feel that way? How are you feeling? Let's work it out, you know? So I can't remember why I didn't want to go, but I'm thinking it had something to do with the fact that I maybe didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, or I wanted to gather my thoughts, or any of the reasons you want to take a year off. And I never have stopped. Never. Because I got into university and I didn't work for the first 4 months. And then that my grades were the worst they'd ever been. And then I started working and I just worked 3 nights a week. I worked 4 nights a week. In fourth year, I worked 2 jobs. In fourth year, sometimes I would run between one job to the other job. In fourth year, I would miss my seminars so that I could serve lunch at a steakhouse and then I would catch up later. Like, I have never stopped. And since I became a freelancer in 2017, 2018, it almost got worse because now it was up to me and the sky was the limit and I'm a hungry ghost. So, anyway, I had a good emotional feeling about that on the weekend. I worked through some emotions about that. And I had already been thinking, like, you need to take some time off. You're 55 years old and there's things you want to do and people you want to see, and it's going to work out. And so that's what I'm going to do. I'm telling you guys before I'm even telling where I work. What a hot topic. So back to the summit. I think something else happened there that really shifted me. So I had Dr. Aviva Romm as one of the guests, and this was a huge honor. I've admired her work for so long. She is a medical doctor, she is a midwife, she's an herbalist, she has specialized training in all the areas. And, she's really one of the smartest people speaking on perimenopause, yet we don't see her on Oprah's stage because there's sort of one way to talk about perimenopause and menopause right now. We know that, right? And what's annoying is that people like Dr. Aviva Romm prescribe hormone therapy and are big believers in it, but they have such a holistic approach. It's far too nuanced for mainstream television, but it's a real shame. Anyway, she's doing great. She's written books and she's a speaker and is thriving on social media. And I was so happy to have her. But when we were talking, she sort of stopped me cold when she said, there's 3 questions you need to ask yourself in midlife. And I'm going to play that exchange for you. You know the feeling when you tried all your health trends, but you're still tired, foggy, or just not yourself? It's not your fault. True health starts deeper at the cellular level. Enter the first ever longevity gummies powered by MitoPure. They're the only clinically proven urothalin A gummies designed to recharge your cells, boost energy, and help you feel strong and vibrant from the inside out. They taste great. I've tried them. They're vegan and clean. And MitoPure's own testing shows they can add up to 12% more muscle strength in just 16 weeks. It's like giving your body a daily cellular tune-up. If you want to feel energized now and as you age, click the link to timeline.com in the show notes and use my code HOTFLASH for 20% off your first order. That's timeline.com and code HOTFLASH for 20% off your first order. Your cells will thank you. What do you want women to ask themselves when they're hearing this? What do you want women to say?
3 questions. How are you feeling? How are you really feeling? What do you want? And what do you need? And the intersection of those questions can help women find the answers that they need. Some women, for example, I have a patient who she was having very severe hot flashes. They were affecting her sleep. And also she has a mother, who experienced early and significant cognitive decline in her 60s. My patient was in her early 50s. And from a philosophical perspective, she did not see herself as someone who would use hormones. She leaned into a natural approach. So the first question is, how are you really feeling? And for her, I feel awful. I feel scared about my dementia, and I wonder if I should try hormones at least preventatively. And she was in that age range where the literature does show that using them early may actually help with certain aspects of cognitive function. She was miserable with her hot flashes. She was not sleeping. And that was affecting her exercise, her diet, her relationship with her partner, because she was feeling just bitchy and irritable and ragey all the time. And so she felt awful, right? She felt really awful. So then what do you want? Well, I want to be able to approach menopause more naturally. Okay, here are all the things that we can do, but also what else do you want? I want to not be suffering. That's an important want. And then what do you need? And for me, a lot of times I help women bridge that gap. Like if they really are having mild symptoms, they want to take a natural approach. They don't need hormones for any medical reason yet, or because they're so significantly suffering, or even suffering at all. Like I don't think it be significantly suffering to do something, then that might take us down one road. But in her case, what do you need? What I really need is to feel better and not feel afraid. And so in that case, it was like helping her see that MHT, menopausal hormone therapy, strategically could help her possibly feel better and fill that gap. In her case, it did. In other women's cases, it doesn't, right? They don't actually get these miracle cures that were promised on the internet with hormone therapy. So, how are you feeling? How are you really, really feeling? What do you want? And what do you need? And then what's going to get you there, right? Like, what are the tools that you get to choose from that get you there?
Well, many of us never knew how to ask those 3 questions or answer them for ourselves either.
That's why I say, what do you really,
Yeah.
really? Yes, it's very hard when we don't know. And I think we still need qualified guides to help us sort through, right?
I've been thinking about this ever since that moment. And I don't ask myself these questions. I don't think very many of us do. And so since then, I've been sort of breaking my own heart by saying, I've been asking extra questions. What do you want? What do you need? How do you feel? These are hard questions. How do you feel? How do you feel about that thing? No, you don't just have to feel grateful that you have it. You're allowed to say you don't like it. You're allowed to say you don't want it. I always remember my sweet baby little niece. And when she was young, she would just say, I don't like it. And even then I would think, she just says she doesn't like it. Like, I didn't even know how to say that. I'm just relearning at 55, how to say, I don't like it. I don't want to do that. I don't like it. I don't want to do that. Not, oh, you should do it. They're asking you, or, you're lucky to have it. 2 years out from menopause, and these realizations are still just like completely rolling in. And I had so many moments during the summit where I was like, whoa. And when I was in like sort of the weeds of the summit, I thought, well, this is silly. I have a podcast every week. I'm just doing like a bunch of podcasts at once. But now I realize that when I went to gather together all these people, it's kind of like a body of work. And I went out of my way to not include anyone who spoke and traded in fear. And that is very meaningful to me. And the fullness of that was meaningful to me. And I know I've heard that it was meaningful to other women. I wanted to thank Emma for this email. She's thanking me and saying there's good information in speakers. She also praises my powers of organization and imagination and wise questions and humor. So thank you, Emma. She says, I'm not uninformed and already engaged with the Red School and other amazing women like them. But still, it's been a transformational few days for me. I was coming here for my own dark night of the soul, even though I'm approaching the other shore, I hope. And there was so much light here that helped me. We got to look to the light. There are some people practicing dark arts in the menopause space. There are. And they will have you believe that menopause goes on forever and they are paying no attention to this soul journey. And so I'm going to keep talking about it. Definitely. There's a few other things I want to get to. One thing I wanted to talk about is how hard it is to even be a journalist today. I call myself a recovering journalist because I realize that in so many situations, it was impossible for me to know all that I needed to know to tell the story that I was telling. But I do think that is something that comes with age where you realize, like, oh, if I actually counted the whole cost, if I actually thought about it and thought, how dare I write a story about this? People spend their lives studying this. But at the same time, those people get immersed in one aspect and they go down a road, and sometimes they can't see the forest for the trees. Am I making sense? Like when you study something your whole life and you start to develop theories about it, it's much more difficult to accept other theories. And so the magic of journalism is that you can come in, you can be like, right, okay, I'm going to talk to that person, and I can see that the gap is here. This is what I'm doing in perimenopause and menopause because, you know, there's mainstream menopause and it's focused on hormone therapy, pretty sort of archaic prescriptions, if you ask me, outdated, focus on estrogen. And when you look at the whole ecosystem of what's available for hormone therapy, just for example, and all the forward thinking people who are doing sort of precision medicine with hormones, and then all the other people who say, no, we shouldn't be using hormones, or no, this is going on or that's going on, and all the people here who want to acknowledge it. This is all, it's all a real schmozzle. And you combine that with the fact that we are living, each of us, in our own reality. That's just a fact, and I don't know how much to get into, but if you ever start learning about quantum mechanics and how particles react when they're observed versus when they're not observed, it's very mind-bending, right? So whatever our life is and whatever we're doing now, we do have our own reality, but due to, algorithms and tribalism, we have people now who have been living in separate realities that are catered to for more than a decade. And there's sort of situations where you stumble across this. And this is why it's getting very hard in health and wellness to cover, because, for example, this Make America Healthy movement in the US, I'm not getting political. I'm just saying this is a movement that is questioning, uh, very thorny issues. Looks like it's trying to make the food system healthier, is tackling vaccines, which, depending what your reality is something that needs to be tackled, or is something that should never be touched because it's perfectly fine and good the way that it is. And you can see, depending on who you talk to, how this movement and this effort, now by Robert Kennedy Jr., endorsed by Donald Trump, is received, and whether anything to do with it is just rejected outright when it's mentioned, or if people are quietly saying, well, I don't really see what they're doing that's so bad. And someone I really respect at the summit said, we were talking about something or someone, and they said, yeah, but they have ties to Maha. And I thought to myself, like, what does that even mean? I bring this all up because it's just like, it's crazy. It's crazy. It's really hard to cover anything. I'll interview someone really reasonable, and then I'll see them post something crazy. Like, I interviewed someone really reasonable, and then I saw that they posted something and called someone I believe is very reasonable a grifter. I can't stand that word, grifter. Uh, what is a grifter? Am I a grifter because I had a summit and I charged $47 for an all access pass, which you can still get, by the way. Am I a grifter? Like, what is a grifter? I think there was a movie called Grifters. They went around stealing from people. I don't think you're a grifter if you create a platform that helps people become more healthy. It's their choice whether to go use the platform. This is just a very small example I put up a post about seed oils. Why? I don't know why I do these things to myself. I put up a post about seed oils. Actually, Kate Shanahan, who is one of the leaders in this area, I just put up a quote that she had said to me at a conversation that we had at a summit several years ago. And the response I got was like, oh no, Anne Marie, not you too. From a lot of people. People did not like it. And I just was thinking, are all these people going and buying like, the yellow oil in a plastic bottle, like that says heart healthy and cooking with it and eating out and not knowing that that's the oil? Like, and they're getting mad at me because I'm saying that there might be an issue with your vulnerable perimenopause gut with consuming these oils. And a dietitian, and I will tell you that some of the nastiest people I've come across on social media are dietitians. And when I say some, I mean three, three or four. By the time I got to the comments on this seed oil post that I had, which was basically just saying seed oils can be very hard for women in perimenopause, this dietitian had gone and responded to everyone, basically saying I was wrong. And one of the things that she wrote was like, people in, she said, a Scandinavian country use cold pressed seed oil all the time and they have, these healthy outcomes. And I just thought, you little vixen, because that is half of the story. Yeah, I would use cold pressed seed oil too. The issue isn't really seed oils, it's the mass produced industrial oil that's made. Go to YouTube and look up how canola oil is made and see if you don't skip that aisle for the rest of your life. It is shocking. So this dietitian is in my comment section. She's taking it upon herself to, debunk what the person who wrote the book on this has said. It wasn't even me saying seed oils are bad. I think the word is seed oils, and I think we all need to understand that there's a reason you can't say words and phrases. That doesn't just come from us. That comes from somewhere else. That comes from highly paid people in marketing and public relations. They don't just think up phrases that make you want to buy things, they think up phrases that shape how you think about things so that you'll keep buying things. I hope I'm not talking like at you like you're a toddler. I need you to know that the term seed oils, it's probably not the best way to describe what we're talking about anyway, but there's a reason you can't say that. And there's a reason why after that post, my engagement dropped by like more than 150,000 for quite a while. It was just bottoming out. I believe it's because I use that word, and I'm not always savvy to the words that you can and can't use, but those words are very, very telling. So it's absolutely impossible. You know, so many of the things that you're not allowed to talk about, or if you do talk about, people flip out about. When you go look at the side, that's not the mainstream, there is so much there. There's not a single topic that I hear about now that I don't go and research and think, oh my God, oh, wow. A whole bunch of people have been working to make us think some things about this. And weirdly, this summer, not weirdly, I was interested very much to read the Gwyneth Paltrow biography by Amy Odell. And it's just weirdly, this all kind of came together in this book. And first of all, this is a dreadful book. Amy Odell is, in my opinion, the least objective journalist I've ever met. You could have made such a more interesting book if you were objective. If you really set out to just write like the best book possible, the most interesting book possible about an interesting figure that you were trying to get to the bottom of it. But no, 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 no. And she interviewed more than 200 people. And I got to tell you, if you interviewed more than 200 people who knew me, you would have some people saying some Way more stuff than anyone said about Gwyneth Paltrow. It is so benign in here. There is not one thing that made me go, oh, she's a real jerk. This author is trying so hard throughout this book to make Gwyneth Paltrow seem like an awful person. And all I came away with was, yeah, she doesn't want to hang around her high school friends. I don't really want to hang around many people from high school either. I get it. I get it. Entire book to me just seems like grasping. Like there was a film that she was in and it didn't do well. And Amy Odell was saying no one understands why she did it. But it was with two really famous, really good actors. It's really obvious why she did it. She wanted to work with those actors. Or, there was just like there's little anecdotes throughout that are she's trying to make her sound like awful and she ends up sounding good. This happens throughout this book. And just one example was that on a film set, Gwyneth didn't hang out with the crew. And then in the next paragraph, she says that she hung out with the makeup artist and would have coffee with him every morning. Well, that's who she liked. She didn't like anyone in the crew. What? And, business wise, I see a lot of similarities because she had a great idea. She's having trouble figuring out how to monetize it. And because she has access to funding, she's gotten funding. And that makes the business seem like it's very successful. But in reality, it might not be, even though she's got this great real estate and she has great ideas. And anything she does gets a ton of attention. And I thought that was all really interesting because I experienced that. It doesn't make her a bad person. There's even an anecdote about how after she broke up with Chris Martin, she said something about how she had to get a new bed. And even that was written in a way that was nasty. And I was thinking, yeah, often when you're in a relationship, you're like, I want to get a new bed. There's just like energy there that I want to change. I want a new bed. I don't understand it. I wish that I kept all of these, but where I really feel the nexus of it is this paragraph near the end. Before I read it to you, the theme in this is that big wellness is predatory and mainstream medicine is safe. Big wellness is out to scare you, and mainstream medicine is good and there to protect you. So throughout the entire book, and when speaking of Make America Healthy Again, there is an effort by this author to try and marry these two narratives and tie Gwyneth in with the resurgence of Make America Healthy Again, but it flops in my estimation terribly. Uh, it tries to make her responsible for basically the wellness industry growth because it dovetails to when she launched Goop. Here's a line: wellness businesses can make the savviest practitioners rich. That is such a ridiculous line. I've never heard anything more ridiculous. Businesses, like business can make people rich if they're savvy. That's just, she brings up Mark Hyman. And the theme here is you would never ask any questions about vaccines, and you're an idiot if you do. And I don't know where you fall down on that, but I think, as I said previously, everything deserves to have questions asked of it. Okay, here, I'll read this paragraph. As it stands now, Gwyneth will probably be remembered less for her film work than the longevity of her fame and what she chose to do with it outside of Hollywood. Her greatest cultural impact isn't popularizing Calvin Klein fashion or jade eggs or I lost a half a day of skiing t-shirts. That's when she was in the lawsuit with the guy who ran into her. It's showing the world just how much consumers will spend and how much effort they will undertake for the luxury of being well, no matter what the science tells us. Her innovation was packaging it gorgeously as flowers and sunshine and beauty and good taste, when it's really about fear of unending sickness and toxins and parasites and death. The critical voices throughout this book just could not be more obtuse about the fact that there is a huge gap between wellness, love and light, parasites, and mainstream. You enter that system and you are on your own. Literally, thank God I have my doctor, because I went to a neurologist and he suggested my headache was all in my head and I had stage 2 hypertension out of nowhere. Whereas I have a doctor who looks at how the body is balanced. She's a homeopath, she's a GP. She has been working with me for 6 months and I feel 10 times better. And I felt so bad. I would be wandering around in that hospital where I get my primary care, pulling my hair out. And I think this is a situation. It happened during COVID where you have these anti-vaccine freaks and you have like people gobbling up anything that will be given to them and arguing and whatever. And then you have a whole reasonable mass in the middle. And that's the area that I want to serve. But it is very jarring when you come across these people who don't see. They don't see. They don't see that for almost everything you mention. There's something real there. There are grains of truth in almost everything. I think it's so interesting that there's so many smart people in these health spaces who don't get that. And that's why there's a lot of influencers in menopause and perimenopause that I can't speak to or promote because I see this in them. So when I put together the summit, there was almost none of that. But this is happening in perimenopause and menopause. I assure you, I just got a press release last night from the Menopause Society. This is a study that's going to be presented at the annual meeting of the Menopause Society in Orlando, October 21st and 25th, so later this month. Do you want to bet that you're not going to hear about this study? Because we don't hear about studies that are anything but positive about hormone therapy. And I'm here to tell all the stories about hormone therapy. I'm here to give you all of the information about hormone therapy. But I am astounded at whenever there is a study that is contrary to the narrative that you need hormone therapy to go through menopause because you're in a deficient state. Hormone therapy prevents heart disease and dementia, even though we don't have the evidence to say that. Anything that comes along that's contrary is ignored. And that is not a mature conversation. That is not a conversation that grown-ups have. That's ignoring inconvenient truths. So, I have many examples of this. One of the biggest, the Women's Cardiology Committee in the US in 2023 did a review of all of the studies on hormone therapy to determine if it prevents cardiovascular disease, and they did not recommend that you take hormone therapy to prevent heart disease. Now, in that literature review, mixed in are studies that use synthetic hormones. We have progestin mixed in with progesterone. It's a mess, but it was literally crickets. And I had one of the authors on my podcast, and she said, we don't think it's going to protect you. And literally no one covered it. So that was in 2023. In 2024, the Lancet Commission on Dementia looked at hormone therapy for the first time and did a review of all the studies and did not recommend hormone therapy to prevent dementia as the primary reason for taking it. Again, we have the issues of progestins and bioidentical progesterone, but the findings are the same. So crickets, not only crickets on social media, crickets in the media as well. When there is a study that finds good things about hormone therapy, there is a mass coverage. When there is a study that calls things into question, crickets. So we have a study that's going to be presented at the 2025 annual meeting of the Menopause Society in Orlando, October 21st to 25th. I've asked to speak to the lead author. I have asked to see the study, and I've also asked to get access to the Menopause Society. A new large-scale study demonstrates a significantly higher incidence and risk of developing autoimmune diseases in postmenopausal women using hormone therapy. Now, autoimmune disease disproportionately affects women anyways. And there have been notable shifts in incidence following menopause. This suggests a potential role of sex hormones in immune regulation. I'm just reading from the press release. I don't have the study. So this new study suggests a statistically significant higher risk of developing all autoimmune diseases except Graves' disease and autoimmune hepatitis. So results of the study are going to be presented at that meeting. Autoimmune diseases have been increasing globally for years. The study looks at 1.8 million. The mean age is 60.5 years old. And compared to non-users, hormone therapy users had a higher incidence of autoimmune diseases at 5 years, 10 years, and across the full menopausal period. The results were statistically significant for 15 of the 17 individual autoimmune conditions. This study is so interesting because when there is a positive study for hormone therapy, you'll hear like a Cochrane review found that hormone therapy reduces the risk of cardiovascular disease by 50%. As Dr. Susan Davis brilliantly broke down in an Instagram reel lately, thank goodness she's on Instagram. That is a relative risk reduction calculation, and it's well known for like bigging up the results of something. But when you look at absolute risk reduction, which is the much more scientific way of reporting results, it's like less than a whole percentage point reduction. It's not like I'm walking along and I take hormone therapy and I had a 100% chance of getting cardiovascular disease, but now I only have half that. It doesn't work like that. And this scientific sleight of hand is used all the time by the people on social media who are promoting hormone therapy for prevention of cardiovascular disease and dementia, even though we don't have that finding in the literature. And the people who research this, even Dr. Lisa Mosconi and Roberta Brinton Diaz in the US, don't say that. They don't say that. They don't say that about hormone therapy and dementia. The prominent cardiovascular specialists don't say that about hormone therapy and heart disease. The findings are mixed, and in some cases, hormone therapy can exacerbate pre-existing conditions. I'm bringing up the relative risk because they don't say the percentage increase here. The lead author said, our study found a statistical link between hormone therapy and autoimmune diseases, but the actual increase in absolute risk is relatively small and varies by condition. So he's saying more study is needed. Hormone therapy remains a safe and important option. It's always a relatively small increase in absolute risk or a relatively small decrease in absolute risk. But I find it very interesting that they did not put it in this press release. I guess they want you to go watch, and I'm going to be on this, but just listen. If you've made it this far in the podcast, thank you. And just go around and listen. Do you hear anyone talking about this study? This is huge. Autoimmune disease can do a huge number on your life. I had Hashimoto's and low thyroid. I'm so much better, but that was life altering. And that's just one of them. This is important information for a person to know if they're trying to decide if they should go on hormone therapy. And as it exists now in popular media and on social media, risks and side effects, it's like there are none. It's like they're not discussed. You really don't hear them talked about. And anything that there is just like so dismissed. So I'm here pointing stuff out to you, being a little bit crazy. Thank you so much for listening. We're going to have some new rounds of interviews. I'll be doing solo episodes. Tell me what you think. You can always text message. I can't reply, or you can email me at amcqueen@hotflashing.com. I hope you have a great week.
Hotflash Inc. was created and is hosted by Ann Marie McQueen, produced and edited by Sonia Mack. The information contained in this podcast is intended for informational purposes only and is not intended for the purpose of diagnosing, treating, curing, or preventing any disease. Before using any products referenced on the podcast, consult with your healthcare provider, read all labels, and heed all directions and cautions that accompany the products. Information received through the podcast should not be used in place of a consultation or advice from a healthcare provider. If you suspect you have a medical problem, i.e. menopause or anything else, or any healthcare questions, please promptly see your healthcare provider. This podcast, including Ann Marie McQueen and any producers or editors, disclaim any responsibility from any possible adverse effects from the use of any information contained herein. Opinions of guests on this podcast are their own, and the podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about a guest's qualifications or credibility. This podcast may contain paid endorsements and advertisements for products or services. Individuals on this podcast may have direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. This podcast is owned by Hotflash Inc. Media.